Right. Well, exactly. That's the same front there too. Like we come to tell you, you didn't have to cheat on something. You know how that is.
It's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. I thank everyone for being here today. This is the second meeting of the county's Correctional Partnership Committee with the TCI. I thank Director Wall and Assistant Director Bob Bass for being here today. They've got a presentation they're going to give us, kind of a snapshot of our jail conditions. And then I'm going to kind of update the committee on some of the environmental look around I've done with some of the state agencies and just kind of update you on that. And then we just got some open discussion, and then we can adjourn after that. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Assistant Director Bass.
Thank you, Mayor. And I've given a copy of this to the mayor on thumb drive. My IT guy wasn't in this morning when I stopped by the office in Asheville, so I wasn't able to pick any up, but we'll get some more. Sheriff, he'll get one. And anybody else, we'll be happy to use the thumb drive. We've got plenty. Somebody had them locked away from you, you know that. That's what you have to do with pencils and things like that and ink pens. So I couldn't get to them. Hey, I want to take a moment to thank everybody for being here today. And thank you for letting TCI be part of this. A snapshot is just simply what the jail looks like that day and time. It's just a Polaroid. It's a snapshot of what it looked like. So as we go through this, you'll hear me refer to the jail management system more than once. Your jail management system is really the brain of the jail. And let me say this, they're very expensive. Yours needs updating, and I would expect that. So moving forward, if you go to a new facility, if that's the decision you make, that needs to be part of the purchase. This one did not give me some of the data that I really wanted, just simply because of age and time. When I say they can be expensive, I'm talking $250,000. That's a lot for a program, but it's really needed for historical data and then daily operations. What you've got it will suffice. It's working for them in the facility. But if I did some real deep digging, it would be a matter of reaching for paper and turning it. There's one particular place in here, it took me about eight hours to come up with some answers. And if I'd had a different jail management system, I could have done that. I'm very familiar with the jail management system. I had the second or third one of those in the state of Tennessee, because Paris, Tennessee is where Martin Elder at. Henry County Sheriff Department got the very first one, and this has been going on about 30 years ago when we started developing that. So I actually went to their facility for training, so I'm very familiar with it. It's a good system. So our objective was to kind of give you guys some overview, some current information about what the jail looks like, what are the physical plant challenges, what the condition of the facility was, some inmate population statistics. Some of those I can reach out and get from TDOC, and I did, and maybe some trends and classification overview. So we know right now there's a big trend going on, and that's COVID. Well, a little over 11,000 people have been released from local jails across the state of Tennessee due to COVID. So they made some kind of arrangements, either put them out on probation, time served, released on recognizance. Some of those put out on ankle monitors. So a lot's been going on out there to reduce that inmate population and reduce their chance of exposure to COVID. So this is how we get it. We do a facility tour. Your staff worked with us really, really great. I appreciate it. They opened all the doors and let us look behind all the curtains. Very forthcoming. And let me say this, your jail is clean, well operated, so bragging on you, Sheriff.
Appreciate that.
And I ran my first jail ever was very similar to what you had, except mine was built in 1974. It was a little newer than what you had, but very similar. And there's that jail management we just referred to as JMS. talk to the staff a little bit about what their challenges are, reach back and grab some inspection reports, and then if we look to see if there were any studies done by outside organizations like CTASC or Department of Justice, anybody that might come in and look at the facility. There were none. I like to start these out a little bit with some quick facts from the U.S. Census. So in 2010, you're at 7,864. I think I'm hearing numbers. You're going to be 13,000, you hope, maybe 14 with the 2020 comes out. 2019, your estimate was 11,284. We all know where the gain came from, right? The prison. So that immediately put 2,000 more people in that column. That's a whopping 43.5%. So we know that's a jaded number. It's just not true. Kind of give you an idea, U.S. Census quick facts break these things down for you. Persons under 18 years of age, 17.9%. I like to know those numbers because your local law enforcement is going to be dealing with those folks if they break the law. So a big portion of your population, there's a possibility of folks that don't abide by the laws and end up in jail. 65 and older, 13%. There's your male and female population breakdown. Education levels, geography is 68.9 population per square mile. National average is 87.4. Land area, 114.9 square miles. So yes, you are the smallest county in the state of Tennessee. There are a lot of components made up of the jail operations, and the sheriff is responsible for all of them. Not only the day-to-day operations, but can legally be held for not doing it correctly. So there's a lot on this plate, and this is just a simple representation of that. I use this slide in all my presentations to get this point across. So inmates have rights, staff have rights. You know what? The facility has rights. There has to be a balance. We've got to worry about mental health, medical, inmate discipline, recreation, food service, hygiene, classification period for contraband control, staffing, gangs that are in our jails. There's not a county without some kind of organized gang activity, some larger than others. Of course, you have to worry about security and public safety, so it's all about public safety. And classification litigation, and certification, we're going to talk a lot about classification. This is out of the National Sheriff's Manual, so what they say is this. Because of constant hard use in the jail, it actually ages 4 years for every year of operation. It's that simple. You can't find another building in your county where the doors are open and closed 24/7, 365, and the lights are on. Or one area that's not being used. If you own a hospital, you won't even have that. You'll have entire rooms stay empty. So it's unique in the way it operates and what it does. I did the simple math. My math came up 248 years old. Now I'm not comparing it in dog years. We're just comparing it in the way it operates. That's how it's rated. The inspection took place March 20th, 2019 of last year, and that's the inspection report that I used. Since then, you have been inspected and recommended under a plan of action. You're good. So, but that at the time I did my report. So, 44-bed facility, 38 male beds, 6 female beds. Population is only at 44. I'm going to show you some numbers later where that increases considerably. But now this is COVID. COVID's taking effect, so it did have an effect on population. The day of the snapshot moving forward, we're at 41 population, male population 30, female 11. I harp on that purple line through there, female. Here's the truth. It's hard enough to get males into TDOC if they're convicted TDOC felons. You could be looking at a year. Some cases less. but I'm just talking about an average. With females, you can be looking 2 to 3 years. I mean, it's a statewide problem. They haven't built any female beds in a long, long time. There was a study that I was part of about 11 years ago, and it just fell flat. They really wanted to increase female bed population. It just hadn't been done. These year TLC inmates were at 13. For a little while, Sheriff, TLC stopped taking your inmates just because of the COVID. They're dealing with those issues also. So, if you can remember this website, it's called the Tennessee Department of Correction Jail Summary Report. And anybody can access that. You can simply Google it. And it shows every jail in the state of Tennessee. It tells you what your neighbors have, what their classification is, and the numbers they have. They also have a section in there for what's going on at the prisons that Tennessee Department of Correction has. So I just pulled 2019. Their classification is a TDOC backup. Local felons, none. Other convicted felons, that could be people brought in by the U.S. Marshals. Could be ICE, none. Convicted misdemeanors, pretrial felons, pretrial misdemeanors with total jail populations. And then where your cap's at, and as you can see, only in the month of February, it was like 88.6. That's the only time that it was under your cap. In some instances, as high as 131%. Now let's be realistic when we're talking about, you've got that number of beds, and you go 5 or 6 or 8 over, that really pushes that percentage way out. So the director and myself, we are working with facilities that can house 350 inmates, and they've got 700 inmates. That's numbers. That's real numbers. So this goes back for 5 years, and then it gives you a monthly average. They use the month of July. I talk to people a lot about this. It just seems like in our region of the state, well, Tennessee, typically jail incarceration goes down in the winter months and then comes up in the summer months. Now, I'm talking to the legal eagles sitting here that y'all deal with this every day in real life. You know what I'm talking about. People can get out on the street and get in trouble. Oddly enough, it's kind of been reversed in Florida. Our transients go down there for the winter. They won't stay though. They come back and they get locked up in jail. So I wanted to give you a quick overview. We go back 3 years, we picked up 15, 16, 17, and kind of looked at males and females total to your cap, and we used those numbers the Department of Corrections gives us. Now that is a report that's generated the last day of the month by the jail administrator. Every jail reports to TDLC. This is part of their planning and research and development. Again, I say it's easy. Jail summary reports, state of Tennessee, anybody can access it. I showed this to a few sheriffs, and they go, well, you know, my neighbor over there's got some empty beds. I'm going to move some inmates over there. So it kind of tells the truth. You know how many they have on that one day, last day of the month. This highest count is reflective of what your jail management system captured. That's not to say there were not days in that jail you weren't in the 90s. But this is an average. So if you take the low ball number and the high ball number, you come up with the average. So, and we can provide that information if y'all like to have it. Again, it would be turning literally a lot of documents. You see in 15, you're at 56. 16, something went on. I don't know what. I'm a data guy, and when I see that, I want to dig deeper, kind of, you know, what was going on. Was there some new city ordinances? Was there some changes in the law? When did we move the, what year did we move the felony to 1,000? Well, the misdemeanor to 1,000. So when you look at that, that may make some changes about jail occupation, how many inmates you have. And of course, we know, here we are in the COVID era, and we're at 55. I like to give everybody a little snippet of what's going on inside the jail as far as classification and time spent. And we draw inferences from this. The inferences I've drawn from this report and the numbers you're looking at that are scattered across here is you really don't have an issue coming out of the courts. You don't have an issue coming out of bonding. You don't, there's no smoking gun here. You're actually, this is 30 days or more, 31 to 60, 2 years or more. That's nothing. That was for a total of 4 inmates that dealt with that across there. So, you have a lot of convicted misdemeanors in this town. That just means you have a lot. It doesn't, I don't know the reason for it. You don't have a Walmart here, right? I bring that up because cities I go to that have a Walmart, they will prosecute somebody for stealing a $5 pair of socks for shoplifting, and it, ends up in court. So these are actually numbers that are their respective numbers. If you see a lot into this third column here, you start questioning why. So I want an inmate to come to jail and get processed and move through because that creates empty beds. So if we've got a court docket that's overloaded, we're not moving people through at a fast pace, we don't have enough judges. Trust me, we do go to counties where those are major issues. It creates a backup in the jail. You don't have that. Not according to this staff. That's a good thing. One of the hiccups I ran into was intake and release. So you're still keeping the red book, is what we looked at. So in order for me to determine how many people were booked in for any given year and how many people were released, it literally meant turning pages. That's the 8 hours I was talking about. Now, I'll go do that. We work for y'all. We'd love to help anyway. If you want to know that, I'll take some time to go get that. But your jail management system is only capturing intake and release, a total number. Why that is important is this. That helps establish that time. And if you should be releasing 20% more than you're intaking. If it's an overcrowded jail, it's going to be lopsided. That number is going to be distorted. I should see a difference. In this particular case, all I can do is reference back to the classification status and kind of use that as probably working. And it does tell you this. How many of you would have thought in 2016 the processed almost 1,000 people through that small jail? That's a lot of business for a county this size. That's a lot of business. 2020, from January to 18, it was only 418. So are you doing citations? Which would explain that in lieu of arrest, trying to keep that population down. So statistics don't lie. They lay something out for us. We just got to go for those inferences and see what they're telling us. Again, you see that something going on in 16. Are you just mad at everybody in 16? You're mellowing as you get older, right? Maybe it's the judge. Was the judge mad? Was he having a bad year? Just kidding, Judge. I do want to go home, please. I'm just kidding. You never know, but the numbers are there. One of the things, if I can find the information, and let me say the mayor's office was so forthcoming in this, because we are talking about an older facility and there's a lot of upkeep to it. I'm going to mention that again as we get ready to do suggestions. There are expenditures of running a jail sometimes. There's HVAC that has to, there's big ticket items. In 15, you spent less than $7,000. 16 to 17, remember the population went up, right? So we're talking about 13,000, and there were some big ticket items. You're going to see them in a moment. 17, 18, and 7, then a big one hit. So 18, 19, is that new air conditioner, new HVAC? Yeah, so that would make a difference. You know, I tell people this, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. I've been to Monticello. There's no expiration on the building. There's not an expiration date on the building. If you want to put the money into it, keep it up, right? If you want it, yeah, for instance, right? So I think y'all had a busted pipe this week here, right? So you got to take care of the maintenance and do it. So I appreciate these numbers. She got this to me. I mean, what, 10 minutes we had this while we were there doing it. I really professional, great job. So kind of break down expenses. But there's that HVAC, $22,422.90. Along with an older facility, I was talking to Director Wall about this morning as I travel around the state working with engineers and firms, architectural firms. I learned how to do the cost efficiency on a facility. And it's pretty simple. You can do it at home by taking your light bill and dividing that by the square footage. It'll tell you the cost of BTUs per square footage in a building. So obviously, that's costing a lot in a new building, better insulated, laid out a little bit different, wouldn't cost you so much. Classification at your jail is very difficult. You just don't really have the capability to move people where they need to be. If we arrest the wrong person, or we arrest a person that's the wrong person to put in the cell with somebody, and we don't have that ability to separate them if somebody gets hurt, that obviously opens us up to 1983 civil action lawsuits, failure to protect under the 8th Amendment. We have to protect inmates from hurting themselves. So, National Institute of Corrections uses this, and I like it because I'm a visual person. So what happens in these rain barrels, throughout the day, we're trying to take an inmate, and we're going to have to separate them. Of course, a given is male and female, but is that male combative? Is he a problem child? Do we need to put him somewhere we can manage him better? Is he going to harm an officer or another inmate? Do they have medical issues? Are they a security threat group or a gang? Do they have mental health issues? I think I told you the last time I was here, the national average is about 33% of all inmates that come into our facilities with mental health issues. That's a national average. Well, they're just disruptive, manipulative. So we have to put all of them in a different barrel, and if we get that wrong, that barrel's going to turn over. I don't know how you're doing it, Sheriff. I mean, it's every day you're having to go, well, can this guy get along with this guy or this gal? So
Every day, I play children, you have to bring it.
or chicken, that's a game that you can take two cars and run at each other. It's more, it's really serious because things can fall through the crack. Failure to protect, we're going to knock those ring barrels over. So we never were able to get, for some reason, the number of the TDLC actual, but it's not going to be as important as what you're doing on probation. And when you go back and look at the jail charges, they're just not violating them at the drop of a hat. So y'all are doing, in my opinion, a fantastic job of probation here. Now that is a lot of folks for one caseworker, I would think. But you're doing a good job. the results are. I mean, sometimes we go to jails and we see the jail with a 33 or 34% capacity of DOP, violation of probation.
Just misdemeanors.
And just a misdemeanor. And we realize that doesn't come with a bond. They're going to sit there until the court docket allows them to get up there in front of the judge and the decision to be made. So, in the jail, you had 6 TDLC with 4 technical. And the technical just means they just violated some part of the condition of their probation, of course. And then 2 new charges. So that's kind of unusual too. Sometimes that's an even split or maybe a little bit more toward the new charges. You're not private, you're running your probation unit, right?
We have a contract with the Cumberland Human Resources Agency.
Okay, you are contracted. Programs are so important to the operation of the jail. So there's a lot of folks out there that'll say, build it and they will come. Just keep warehousing. That's what we do in America. We lock up a lot of folks. We institutionalize, lock up more folks than any other country on this planet. We have a good, fair, just court system. It's America, greatest place in the world. So, but we do put a lot of folks in. If you can infuse programs into corrections, maybe you can stop that revolving door, that recidivism rate that occurs. You don't have a place to really effectively do programs here. You know, in this business, and I've been in it almost 30 years, it's taken some changes. You know, one time the philosophy was lock them up, do nothing for them. Then it was maybe do some kind of outreach programs in the community to stop, and then it's programs. I'm just on the side of programs. I started my career in programs, and I found out it makes a big difference. So if considering a new facility, an area, and you have to meet our standards, have an area for programs, and then it's reaching out to people to help us. You do have AA meetings, they don't get good time credit for that. You do have a litter grant, and you are giving good time credit for that, and then trustees. The other day I was having just a casual conversation with the sheriff. Said he had 500 inmates, and he think he had 3 that would actually qualify for trustee status. I've seen the jail administrator shaking his head over there. This number is perplexing. I've never seen a number like that. So I've tried to wrap my head around it. All I can say is good for you. National average is 53.5%, if my memory serves me correctly. But typically what I see in county jails across Tennessee is recidivism rate between 85 and 99, and yes, I did say 99. Went to a jail that had 110 inmates in it, and 109 of them were repeat customers. So that all relates back, what are we doing for programs? How are we trying to stop this? And do we have the drug courts? Do we have people coming in the facility to work with anger management? Rutherford County Workhouse is a place that actually our director used to work at. They have over 100 programs. Now some of those programs don't issue out good time credits. So that's fine. If it changes one person, gets them off drugs, doesn't bring them back, or turns them a different direction, I'm very happy with that. I do like programs that issue good time credits because, simply put it moves them in out of my facility faster. 60.9, almost 61%. I don't have an answer for that other than congratulations, that looks good. But now if you put that into numbers and say 6 out of 10 are coming back to jail, it doesn't sound so appealing, right? Any questions so far? We'll just take a tour. And this is something that y'all deal with, what, a couple times a year, right?
Yeah, twice a year. At least.
This was September 13th this year. This particular instance, you didn't have to evacuate though. In the past, have you had to evacuate?
We have, water gets up in the sewer, it backs up in the floors.
I would think that if this occurs often enough, it's got to test the integrity of the foundation of the physical plant. It has to be washing out. It just has to be. So in this particular case, you have well planned out emergency plans and what your next step is going to be. But, you know, again, when we talked in the earlier slide about it's all about public safety, if we got some guys here, you know, that creates a problem. They can be at risk if we have to transport them and move them out. And at this point, they're going to know that's going on. That is an auxiliary building I want to talk a little bit about. It has multiple use because you did an expansion. These are your outside coolers, which in itself is kind of unusual. We don't see that. We see it inside the security perimeter inside the building. I know why you did this. Your auxiliary building, and I told the sheriff I want to show the good, the bad, the ugly. I have to be truthful. So this is part of the bad. This is just directly a relationship with the fact that he doesn't have any storage down there. You know, there are records, those of you that are in law enforcement in the courts realize that we have to retain, they have to be held. And it's not just a problem in Trousdale County. People have to do things in other counties to make amends for that. But I would recommend getting rid of this because that low weight on this building, what I know about construction, doesn't need to be doing that. Not only that, it's just a fire hazard. There's a lot of weight up there. Looking in the records, and you actually did have some damage already that we pointed out the day we were there, possible leak. So that building is actually being used for medical and booking. So you have to do what you have to do. Again, it's working, but there's no cell to lock anybody in to do their booking or wait time. I've never seen that before. We have that in older jails, much older than this jail. So I don't work for the fire marshals, but I'll have to say that one of their codes is this: you can't lock somebody up in a facility that has materials above them that's flammable. And that just makes sense. So you couldn't put a cell in here for booking anyway, because we're talking about, that's all wood. As I go through the pictures of the kitchen homes, you ought to think about your kitchen at home. And I'd almost guarantee it's bigger than what you're about to see. I know my kitchen's bigger than the one in that jail at my house because my wife beats me on a regular basis. Is this being recorded? My wife asks me pleasantly to go into the kitchen and do the dishes and mop the floor, and I love doing it, so I do it. I'm happy all the time to go do that. So it's bigger than this one, trust me. And it's just I'm really amazed at how you accomplish that. You're serving 3 meals a day. So at 50 inmates, that's 150 meals that are being prepared in this little tiny kitchen. Public doesn't see this. So in, let's say, Madison County Jail, they are preparing and serving more meals than that 1,800 bed hospital they got up there. That's a lot of work. That's one side, this is the other side.
And that's not microwave dinners either, that's cooking.
That's cooking, old-fashioned cooking, right? Looks like a fairly recent stove purchase.
I put that in 25 years ago.
That's amazing how clean it is. The hood about the same time? Okay. Well, it looks like brand new, so That's,
That hood was put in 1992.
okay.
I purchased that stove in 96. We did have a regular cook stove, right, like you had at home.
Just a range.
And the pot was so heavy, it was actually burned it down.
Mhm.
I purchased that.
Well, and speaking of fire hazards too, I've walked the facility numerous times. This is a pretty much all wood in your kitchen that is directly attached to the jail. In fact, you can't even get to the jail without walking through the kitchen. So you have a tinder box laying right next to your population. If there's a grease fire in there, I mean, the proper implements are there. You've got fire suppression equipment to be able to do those things, but it's just dangerous. I mean, it really is a potentially dangerous situation. It's not, with the side of it. You're looking at the floor, the walls above it, it looks like it's an old house now. And it's a tinder box sitting right next to, 40 to 50 people at any given time.
That is really on our minds in corrections, because for years, if you just Google worst jail disaster in history, it would say the Murray County Fire.
June
46
26, 1977.
Yeah.
I photographed 42 dead men laying in the floor.
Yeah. I have the newspaper article at home, and I worked up there with Enoch George when he was sheriff all those years. And, when you have to, it's a jail. It's supposed to be a fortress. They had to breach it with a record. They went up and got a Holmes 440 record and ran into the wall. And listen, that wasn't inmates.
8 of them were civilians.
The president, sheriff's mother and father, correct? Bucky's mother and dad was visiting.
One of his siblings.
And one of his siblings was visiting relatives there that day, and they died in that fire.
And
The president, sheriff, the guy that's sheriff today.
And none of them died of burns. They all died of smoke inhalation.
Yeah, you don't burn up in the concrete. You die from what the inmates set on fire. So
Going back to the jail here, when I went to work for the county, we had 4 people in jail.
right.
And this shows you how much it's grown over the years. That kitchen was just the right size for, less than 10 population, I think.
Did the sheriff live in
He
it?
lived there, he lived there, he had a dining room table in the kitchen there, and the whole office was in it. It's just grown over the years, where we're at now.
Clay County is still, they're operating facilities somewhat like that. I mean, it's exactly like that. So they've taken the living quarters and turned those into offices and so forth. I think that's the only 2 left. Is there one more? Humphreys, yeah, and that's fixing to go away, because they're fixing to build. And Clay is too. They're very, and Pickett, I don't know that he lived there,
In the
but
basement.
they lived in the basement, that's right. You have to put your ice cooler outside, which, that's not ideal. We would like to have that inside. Easier to keep clean, not out in the elements. I know restaurants, stores do it all the time.
But that's in a breezeway, but still, it's.
It is in a breezeway, yes. I haven't got a clue why I got, whose arm is that? Is that your arm? What was you pointing to? What was you pointing? I don't know, we don't know who the culprit is. We'll ask you about this, what are they pointing to? And I said, I have no idea, but you're using outside coolers, and I know why you are, you just can't put them. I mean, you had gone to the jail, you needed this room. The great thing about having those coolers, having a storage area, a place for that, is you can buy in gross. So that's a money savings to the county. If you can go to the vendor and say, we want 300 boxes, not 5. Laundry room, not bad, but that's wood above. Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out to me with the laundry is, and I actually asked the sheriff this question, like, what do you do if a unit goes down? And he said, well, we've had to go to the laundromat before, and we've hung wires out and dried clothes and things of that nature. It's just a tight spot. And, with wood overhead and a gas dryer right there, that's kind of scary as well. So, you definitely want to consider extra spaces when you're talking about at least a backup with a residential style. But there's no space to put one in there, there's no hookups, there's nothing to be able to combat the situation if anything breaks down at all.
Good point. That's storage outside that you're using. But you are meeting our standard, you're keeping that cleaning supply separate from food supply. Back in the jail, that's kind of a makeshift post where the officer sits between two cells, which is not ideal because at one point he's got his back to somebody. And remember, the layout of this jail is not done what is done modern times now. We build a jail where it's on a horseshoe, there's one central control tower. Cuts down on staffing, doesn't relieve all the staffing, but it cuts down on staffing posts because that person that's operating those doors has a clear, and we see that happens when we work with the architects, a clear view of everybody and what's going on. There's always going to be blind
Can I say
spots.
something about that as well,
Yeah.
Bob? That's one of the things that really sticks out too, is there's no secure control center in this facility. And it is a requirement, because if everything breaks down and there's a riot or an escape, and you at least have to have someone who can liberate the inmates through a key or through the touch of a button, right? But if they take over something, then you have to have somebody be able to report that and monitor all of the systems within the facility. You don't have any of that. We recently had by the grace of God, had a facility that some inmates escaped, actually took over the tower because they left the tower door or the central control door propped open. They escaped, and it just so happened their 911 dispatch is in that same jail tower, which is another bad idea. And what we saw happen, what was so lucky, is those inmates who were escaping while they beat a lady pretty bad and threatened the 911 dispatcher and got in the tower and took the keys to get out of the facility. We're lucky they just didn't pour water, because all of their emergency communications would have been shut down. That's the purpose of having a secure tower, not to protect 911, but imagine if they take over that tower, they're taking over all ingresses and egresses or in the entire facility. And when you don't have that here, you just get the wrong person in here. And forget escape, that's when lives are at stake. And that's always, anytime I walk into a facility, because you're not the only one that doesn't have a secure control center. There's quite a few that were built before 1980 that didn't. But it's always a concern, and we do see it happen from time to time where they, if there's a riot that happens, then we see lots of inmates escaping because of that exact same thing.
Yeah, and you know they got the best chairs, right? It's just a little humor. I think this is a female unit. I don't remember.
That's one of
We typically find those cleaner facilities, females take over. This is a female unit. There was a face there. She refused to turn her head away around, so I cleaned it up. But, you know, this is just, I wanted to use this picture because I'll let you see, this is just how inmates behave. They're not supposed to be putting stuff up on the walls. You can hide contraband back there. It invites bugs, lice, whatever. I promise you can tear that down, and 3 hours later it's right back up. So it's a constant battle for correction officers. But overall, it's very clean. You see it's pretty crowded. Some of your plumbing chases, the shots I've got there, we all know this is a lot of copper in this jail, a lot of pipes going bad, a lot of years, a lot of abuse and use on it. That's your outside wreck, correct?
it was, we don't get any more.
Good, because that's a security breach out of this world, right? I mean, you know, if he wants to go over that fence, he can climb that tree. Yeah, not ideal. This is the entrance to your facility. It's pretty well laid out with glass and so forth, but again, Director Wall pointed out a good point. We're going to go back toward that kitchen. From anywhere on this side of the building back to jail, we have to go through the kitchen. That's not exactly the best egress to have. Today, all kinds of security concerns are looked at. That would be SG glass, SG3, not just house glass. I mean, somebody can drive by and just shoot in there. So when a new facility is built, security in that process, thinking process, really drives design. How secure is it? You have a magnetic door, right? Lock, so they consider their buzzing in. I put this note in here because some of the discussions we had in our very first gathering was, maybe if you moved out and built a new facility, you might keep the old facility for a workhouse. So traditionally what happens is you're building a new facility. Part of transitioning in the planning stage is to establish the furniture, fixtures, and equipment you can take from the old jail. What is usable, what will work, what can save us money. In a lot of cases throughout the state when this has occurred, there's been a lot of money savings. They either had new equipment, new stoves, they already had a new jail management system, computer hardware, things they can move. You make a list of that. In this particular case, it's going to be a pretty short list. Now, I'm not demeaning your operation whatsoever. It's just that the components that you have you're working with today are not going to work in the new facility. And why would you do that if you're considering later maybe using it as a workhouse? Let it stay in place. One of the things some counties do, they don't think through it. They act too soon and they take a D9 bulldozer and drive through this. And a year later go, we didn't calculate this correctly, we're overcrowded. Wish we had that old jail, we'd put a little money in it and turn it into a workhouse. So don't be too quick to do away with this. If it's your decision to move forward with a new facility, and think about that furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Those are contractual agreements you can make, and if you provide that or the architect provides that, but that's something that can be worked through. So, just to recap, and again, let me say this in my defense, majority of my snapshots, and it does depend on the size, and this isn't a large facility, but a 200-bed facility can usually produce about 120 slides. And you see I'm at 49 slides here. I can go gather more information, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't take much to rationalize. You're ready for a jail. Just purely because your physical plant is aged. And you're becoming overcrowded. It is an antiquated jail. It's got a turnkey, it's door locks, the lighting, the plumbing, no program area, limited storage, and we saw an example of that. The floor plan is just not what's conducive to operating a jail in today's correctional environment. Administrative offices are kind of the first thing you walk into, and then y'all actually got the new administrator. You've got your CID units, all those folks from another building over there. So it's a broken up kit. Right. It's a beautiful building. We met over there. I'm an operations guy. If at all possible, if we can make everything be the same campus, I kind of like that. We do have a lot of facilities that are operating multiple facilities. A lot of counties operating multiple facilities, let me correct myself. And they're spread out. Public egress concern for me, and that's an open sally port. Can I tell this one story? There was a jail being built. It was my jail, and I was a big part of that in my county. And they wanted to save money by having an open sally port. Sally port's no naval term. It's just a gate outside the fort, where you actually float in supplies, shut that gate, open another gate, bring the supplies into the fort. It's been around for years. So, That's what Sally Port actually means. And they wanted to cut a real nice drive-through closed-in Sally Port with cameras and all, and the public couldn't see. And in this particular case, it was just about the time that a celebrity got rearrested, a very famous celebrity, and brought in on a sports memorabilia charge. And the public, they had open Sally Port, could get right up to the fence. The news media could get right up to the fence. I mean, it's a security breach. So, in a new jail design, it's just a no-no. And you have one that backs out, you have to back out of it. Sally Port should be designed to drive through.
And the weather is always an issue.
Always an issue. Your overall security perimeter, well, to me, it's just an issue because it's sitting on that canal. So I don't do these without leaving some suggestions. Now, they're my suggestions. They're my opinions. Just based on the years of doing this. And I can say, as far as anybody in the state of Tennessee, I've been involved in more cradle to grave operations than anybody in this business in Tennessee. 40-some odd facilities built in my career that I had hands-on involved in, maybe a little more, probably around 47. So I know where the landmines are, and the one way to avoid that is develop a master plan. What are your expectations? Do you really need a jail? Well, my opinion today is, based on what I saw there in my snapshot, is you need a jail. You need a new facility. Just to avoid litigation, those risks, they're always going to be there, but they're really high when you can't meet classification. Consult the engineer, and I think you've done some of that already according to the documents I have in front of me. There are a lot of studies that can be done. There's feasibility studies, and there's needs assessments. I think where you're at, it would be, how many beds do I need? That kind of stuff. It's not rehashing about whether you need a jail or not. And some of those studies are very, very involved. The person conducting them could have 160, 200 hours in them. You could be waiting for them for a year. Now, I'm not trying to prod you to move. You take as much time as you need. TCI is here and we'll help in every way we can. But that's what happens when you get into the study stuff. I think where you're at is, how many beds do we need? How much can we afford? And how long do we want to forecast out? So there's a simple way of doing that, and this is what they use. Let's talk about your incarceration rate. So you take your population, you take how many people are in jail that are incarcerated, and then you divide that and you get the math. When they do the studies, they'll actually give you comparisons, and they'll try to find surrounding counties of your size. Well, there are no surrounding counties of your size. There's jails your size, but just not surrounding counties. To kind of give you an idea, does your incarceration rate sound high or low? Then you have to also look at your population trends and how much you're going to grow in 10 years. So now you project out. And it's really, at the end of the day, it's simple math. So after the meeting, if you want to talk to me a little bit about that, I kind of put some numbers together. But again, TCI's compliance, remember that, please. We're not regulatory. We can't make you build a jail. We don't have the authority to tell you to build a jail. You're the stakeholder, you're the property owner. He rents it 4 years at a time, you own it. Those decisions are solely up to you, your county commission, or the purse string holder. We just want to be part of the process to help you any way we can. I talked about this the last time I was here. and it's reiterated here in this bullet point, you build the jail according to your operational philosophy. You tell the architects how you want to operate. So I have a public defender, right? So where do you meet with inmates when you go down there?
Here,
Yeah, you,
no, I'm not sure. I don't meet with inmates here. I mainly deal with them in Wilson County, but I do have an individual that meets with them here. And I think it depends on whether or not they're brought up to court.
you used to do it. How did you do it?
Basically, they put us where they could. Usually it was in the booking room if it was open. Now, the former booking room, at least the last few times I went, we were in the former booking room, which would come in the front door, you buzz through the front door, there's an area off to the right, we were doing it there. There's been a couple times where I got stuck in the medical office and did them in. So basically, it's just get in where you fit in right now.
So it's kind of a hodgepodge. But you do something in Wilson County? So they have a program there, right? Where they know you're going to this room and so.
Well, we have a room up front, and then
Right.
if it's busy, we're taken back to the actual pod because there's a room off to the side of the pod.
Right. The conditions here are not exactly ideal. For all kinds of wrong reasons, for security, if something broke out in there, your safety would be. So,
Yeah, before I moved to booking, to the shed around back,
mhm.
we met in this room where Mayor's talking about. That's where we have our visitations in there. Attorneys come in and see their clients are in there. We have parole hearings in there.
Wow.
All in that one room. And sometimes you have to ask people to leave or sit and wait in the car. If somebody come in and try to make a bond for somebody, we'd have to book them in that area too. So we'd have to make them stand outside or sit in the car while they leave.
It's about a 10 by 10 room.
We had a 10 to 10 room, and our filing cabinets, we had one there, and I first went to work there, we got 15, and then we all them out the back building. So we couldn't even walk around in the office there, so we got all in. That's one of the main reasons we moved it around back. One man got mad one day, he was coming in trying to get somebody out of jail, it was raining outside, and I couldn't let him come in because we would get somebody else. He said, "You choice words." Let's say you vehicle, which you couldn't blame him, they just flow you out to work.
It's not exactly ideal for that part of it. Going back to the security for the public, and if you're officer of the court, but we still have to worry about your safety too. So, now, I'm not saying this just to be, to get a chuckle or a laugh. I'm just telling you that, you're not in this alone. There are jails that are looking at construction, new construction, because they're faced with some of the same things. I'm still sometimes amused at what I see. So you talk about visitation. We have a jail where you go visit on the front porch. You never enter the jail. They go get the inmate and bring him up to the picture window. They go, can't make this stuff up. But that's all they
I
have.
want to say one thing, and I hope this is not a place, but we would be in a lot worse shape if it wasn't for those two gentlemen right there. They have helped us, because they don't have to. They can say, look, they're going to jail, they're going to jail. 200 overcrowded, too bad. But those men have been blessing us, and they help us operate.
That's obvious in the data I pulled. So when I say there's not a, and let me just be frank with you, I do work in counties, there are some criminal justice issues in those counties, and they contribute to the problems of the jail. And that's not here. You don't see that. If it was, I would have saw that in those numbers, judges. They're not in those numbers. They're not there.
I can call Judge Lemon or Judge Kane anytime of night, sometimes they'll do. And they're always helping us. We have people come in sick and just, the virus going on, we don't have room to put anybody, overcrowded. We have to put people in our new justice building up here, housing, in those holding cells, to segregate them out. And we're back and forth. It's been hard.
And it's hard on those gentlemen too, because their weight is on their shoulders. And when they make those decisions, they have to make them based on good, factual, sound advice from your side and all parties involved. So my hats go off to them. I wouldn't have that job for all the teams out. because I know am I doing the right thing? Unfortunately, in the judicial system, you get to know the customer like we do in the jail system too. So, you know, like, have you been in my courtroom before? Yeah, I was in here yesterday, and I'll probably be back tomorrow. So you do have some basis on make that decision.
One of the things too that COVID really pushed across jails across the state was that there was a lack of medical or isolation space to quarantine individuals. And I say it was minimal. Many had it. In your case, it's real bad. There's really no place inside of that jail to quarantine someone. Luckily, you have the Justice Center right next door, and you're utilizing the court holding cells, and that that places problems on your staffing, getting them to a shower because there's no shower over there, or right directly in the cell area. So it really exposed itself at how much of a shortcoming we have in the county related to that type of space. Nowhere to put anyone if they're extremely sick, extremely violent even at times if you have multiple. So it really exposed that. So operating philosophy is going to be very important as you guys move forward and make decisions.
And we can work with you on that as part of our technical support. Remember, my primary goal is here for education. I feel like a little fish in a big sea of big fish around all these judges and DAs and attorneys and all, but I got a little experience in federal court, more than I want. So I kind of know what can be done in the jail, what can't be. I was a jail administrator for 6 years, and I've been with TCI 22 years. So I appreciate the hard work everybody does. It's a team effort. I generally get to go to counties and say, let's fix the programs in your county and reduce your jail population. And let's not jump out here and start building a jail. I come away with a little bit different opinion in this particular case. You're just ready for a jail. And you wouldn't have to incorporate that program area. So moving forward in the future, we can even reduce recidivism rate even lower and build something that's going to be constitutionally correct. So Judge McCollum down at Memphis ruled Shelby County to be unconstitutionally violent. That's what a federal judge said. Those were harsh words. In Louisiana, unconstitutionally violent. In Illinois, unconstitutionally violent. So just remember, when you don't have good classification, you put all those folks in there. It's summertime, temperatures rise, they rise here too. Y'all do an amazing job of what you got to do. Thank you for letting us be part of this. And I'll answer any questions anybody has. If I don't know the answer, I'll get you the answer.
For the master plan, you're talking about there developing the master plan, is that something that, when looking at some of the other ones, I just looked at Davidson County, they hired a consultant, is that something we need to do a consultant, or do you think CTAS can assist with that, or?
Yeah, between TCI and CTAS, we can help you develop your master plan on how you want to move forward. It doesn't require a consulting company that you're going to pay a couple $100,000 to tell you what you probably already know.
And
especially in a county this size.
And I already see that y'all got it going on because you're already proactive and you've already taken some of my advice. So y'all are already working towards the master plan. Master plan is great for milestones and setting targets. I live by an old saying I heard 100 years ago. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So the master plan helps lay out a roadway, pathway. So yeah, we can help you develop that.
And I guess we develop a master plan and then move to the engineering firm. I know we talked about it last time, you have to forgive my memory.
No,
we had a lot of meetings since then.
You're dead on. That can be the step. So what typically at this junction happens is I left you with this snapshot. And you can reproduce that. It's yours now. You own it. And you can give it to whoever wants it. Anybody on the county commission. You can start doing talks and start doing feelers. What the commissioners think. Is this something that needs to move forward? That's typically what happens. You need about a week or two to kind of absorb this a little bit. And if you want to go down and do a fact finding and look at what I presented here, did I show that I represent correctly? You want to go look at that? And then the next step is to say, this is going to happen. So the big if is, where is the cost? And you can't get to the cost of that and what you're going to need without filling in the other steps. So then the next step will be, well, here's one milestone, we're moving forward. This committee is going to make a recommendation that they move forward looking at a new jail construction. From then, we will help you set up some parameters. Now, I have a property matrix lesson plan that I present. And we can set another date for me to come up and show you that. So how many things, does anybody want to jump out there and tell me, how many things are you looking at if you're looking at property you want to be able to jail on? Give me a number where you think you need to look at. How many elements do you need to look at to say that's suitable for putting in jail on? 10, 12, 5 things?
Was it 100? I think I've heard you say this before.
There's a lot. People are amazed at the number of things you gotta look at. Code setting. Is there 3-phase? Is there sewer? Is there water? All these things you have to look at. So I actually give you a blind, I developed it where you can go out and look at property and you can grade it and it's blind. In other words, you graded it and you don't know what property you picked until it's over with. You know, well, I think property A is better suited. So that we can provide and I can show you how that works.
Talking about plumbing, that's what our major problem we're having right now is we got just a residential line, sewer line in the jail. Well, I was thinking you just cost me stopping it up. We're having to go in there, worm it out, where the cable up in.
Technology has come so fast and so far since this jail was built. It's going to be mind-boggling the things you can put into a new facility too, that things you just never have to overcome. Of course, those grinder pumps, that's a given, it needs to be done.
But I think what you're looking at here is absolutely the right step. Looking at the piece of property that are available to you. And then at that point, look at this property matrix and go, okay, let's check off the list and see which site is the most suited. And find out, and part of that, when Bob talked about making that decision, we're going to move forward with at least building a jail and consulting with engineering firms to find out what the suitability for the property is and deciding on that piece of property. I think that would probably be your next step, and consulting with an architectural firm or start, putting together CTAS will help you put out a request for qualification, request for proposal for different architectural companies you can blind test them as well. Where you send that out and whoever's going to design the facility, you just rate them based on the qualifications. CTAS does it all the time, just about for the last, how many projects? Probably 15 or 20 projects that have been done. CTAS has always helped with the RFQ and RFPs. So,
and they would actually be present for those interviews.
Right.
Because that is County Technical Services Assistant. TCI will not be present for those interviews because that would be unprofessional. That'd be a conflict. We wouldn't do that. We don't recommend either side. That's your total decision. So, and there's a lot of ways that can be done. You just have to explore what's the best direction for you. Some of them will work with you and do concept designs. There might not even be a charge, but you know what they're looking for. So when the time comes to actually pick them, they won't be the ones hired and take it off the back end. Either way, you're going to be paying it. So that's the way most of ours do. Then they do construction documents. At one point, you'll need to be talking about a construction manager. They are very helpful in helping that architect put together that cost. So once you can develop that cost, then you're back in front of your full county commission talking about this is what it's going to cost and how it's going to be funded.
You not have to know the size of the facility before you know what properties are going to be suitable or not suitable.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to be size dependent, and we're very limited in what we have to even pick from, period. So it's like, we can't go out here and decide where we're putting this until we know how big we're going to build. But I thought we were past the stage of deciding if we're going to build a jail. We were into the phase of deciding how big and where. And maybe I'm jumping ahead of the game, but you haven't told us anything here today that we haven't heard before.
Yeah.
You know, we were ready to move beyond this to the next step, I thought, but maybe I'm getting the cart before the horse.
Well, one of the things, it's about taking inventory of what you have and what you have available to you. And as you go into these studies, understand what size of jail you need, what type of parking that you will need. Are you going to move your whole sheriff's office under one roof? There's lots of considerations, but Bob's talking about the master plan. Because even though you know that you need to build a jail, has there been a vote taken to say we are moving forward with building a new facility, a new correctional facility? And if so, are you taking the steps to develop? Are we going to hire engineers to come and look at these things to discuss suitability for these pieces of property once that occurs? So, in other words, you're telling me that everything you've seen today, since you were aware of it, then the next obvious step would be having a feasibility study done to see how many beds you need.
Right. I think right now the biggest question we all have, and we know that's dependent on time. When we built this addition 22 years ago,
92.
okay, or more. Anyway, you know, we looked at that time, what we were going to carry, we were hoping 15 to 20 years in the future. It took us 22, 28, whatever, beyond our expectations at that time. But right now, we need some figures. Your expected jail population in 5 years is going to be this, in 10 years it's going to be this, 15 years it's going to be this, in 20 years it's going to be this. So we can determine how far out we want to take this process, so we can determine what size the facility is going to be. So then we know how much land we're looking for to put that size facility on. You know, now if we get into the situation where we need 20 acres to put everything together, or we can segregate these things and keep part of it where it is, and like you were talking about, then we might be able to have a lesser size campus for what we're looking at if we have to back up. But right now, I think the thing that I'm not speaking for this committee, I'm not even on the committee, I'm on the commission, but was how big? You know, how big are we looking at? And a rough estimate of what that's going to cost.
This is the step that I have to take that I've done today.
Oh, I appreciate all of
No,
that.
I know you do, but I want to clarify that, and it's what I promised the committee I would do last time I was here. We did work a committee one time without that step, and it was a total failure.
Okay.
So it'll never happen again. I will come in and say, so that everybody can go back to their constituents and say, this is why we need a jail, this is why we're doing that. And I appreciate your sentiment. It seems like everybody's all on board. You know you need a jail.
Right.
Your next step then, as part of the master plan, is contacting who you want to do that needs assessment. If you use CTASC, it doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
Doesn't cost you anything. You can hire other professionals to do that. I've worked with Jim Hart. He will use some of the data I gathered here for that. He will grab some of his own.
He's been out here before too, didn't he?
Sure, and he does. I would put his studies up against anybody, but let's remember there are two kinds of studies. There is a marked difference between a feasibility study and a needs assessment. Jail needs bed spacing is what you're looking for, and that's also the support services that's going to go along with that. So that's going to tell us what the footprint, like you mentioned. So now you know.
Right.
And the next step is, if we're good with that, we've established that, you're right, procuring the property, to make sure that footprint sits on it. And that's where some people, and that's part of my property makers, they'll make a mistake. Because if you drop it in, say, 50,000 square feet out there, you can need 5 acres to support that. You're exactly right. Now, could that be parceled out? One of the questions I ask at that junction is where's the sheriff's impound at?
Right.
So, you know, the judge can appreciate this. You've probably heard cases about custody, of a chain of custody. So, you know, boy, most of my sheriffs want their impound lot involved in that because it's secure. And if we've got a TBI case going on or something like that, that chain of custody is very, very important. After the fact, you can park it in the junkyard anyway. But up to one point, you're responsible for it.
Well, also, I don't want us to run into the problem we ran into with this campus. We don't have any room to expand.
Right.
Even if we wanted to add on down there, there's no way unless we build over the creek, I guess, I don't know. But I'm just saying, I don't want us to get, if we're going to a new campus, I want us to have enough room for future needs in that property. And I don't think any of the ones that we have looked at that are in town particularly are big enough for even present, much less future needs. So I just, to me, I feel like, and I feel like most of the commission, I'm speaking for them, don't want us to get locked in. We have shoehorned things into existing facilities for years, and it's caused us problems for years. We've paid the price for doing that for years and still are. So we need to bear that in mind, I think, as far as going forward.
I think taking the right steps, Commissioner Buell, because look, what he and I have actually seen directly, I'm saying, where they threw a price out, that is a nightmare. So if you turn around and tell an architect, I need a jail, and it's gonna cost $10 million, not a penny more, he gonna build you one.
Yeah.
Is it what you need? Absolutely not. But he'll build it if you say, so.
But you do have architectural firms that have designed jails that have existing plans that they can show you this concept, this concept, this concept. And then, you know, it's not like starting from scratch. So, but you have to know how big you want to go with to even be able to look at the concept.
You're exactly 100% right. And how far do you want to go out in the future? So
that'll be part of your RFQ process to say who's built jails. You have a chance to, check references, things of that nature, to see who's happy with the product they receive, so forth and so on.
And
But you are correct. These are some small footprints.
And a design that can be expanded into the future, if necessary.
Absolutely.
And I want to say, well, one thing about that design is remember, stacked jails are very expensive. They're very expensive to operate. So you've got two-story jail, and I've seen that where they try to get that square footage on that small footprint, Mayor, and they go up. Well, this is a jail that takes a certain amount of staff, and that second floor is another jail that takes a certain amount of staff. And there's that third. The second thing I want to reiterate, I mentioned this before, statute says a criminal justice center has to be in the city limits. Your jail, if it's not a criminal justice center, can be out in the county.
We do not have any city limits.
Metro.
We're metropolitan, so we can put it anywhere.
All right, okay.
I think I'm correct in saying that.
Well, you might want to get an opinion on that because the charter says that urban services district is a metropolitan, is a municipal entity, so I don't know. Again, that's one of those areas we get into because we're metro, some things are weird as how they're applied to us. That came up recently with somebody was asking.
But we established where those lines are.
That's true.
Yeah, we can incorporate that into it quick and make
I think the
it.
code just says county seat. Even though your metro, is there still technically Hartsville city limit?
There is no city limits. We have an urban services district, but we do not have a city limit.
Would you like for me to put the elements of a master plan down and email those to you?
You can, and also I downloaded the one for Davidson County. I can send that out as well.
Yeah, that's pretty involved.
Yeah,
That involved about 5 facilities.
But yeah, any information you can share with it, please do that. You can send it to me and I'll share it to the rest of the committee.
Sure. Y'all are already doing some things, and which I appreciate.
Any more questions for Mr. Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Good question.
Well, last time we met, we talked about some of the property the county currently has, and I've sent maps out before, and I actually handed them out today to go past the initial agenda here. I did reach out to T-Deck to look at the site, I call them Site A and Site B. Site A would be where we talked about before, it kind of sits behind the sheriff's office between it and the football field. It is, according to the state of Tennessee, it is in a floodway if you were to build there. And so I reached out to the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation, got their thoughts on it. And that's, to go past the agenda, the next thing you get says Site A and it has a listing valid on it. This came from the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation. Some of the things they think we would need to do if we were going to build on Site A. Obviously, it's more involved than Site B, just given that it is in an actual floodway. So if there is any flooding at all, that is the first place the water is thought to go. They said one of the requirements is it has to meet a certain survey, and anything you do on it has to survey that there's not going to be any rise in water somewhere else, and no surveyor has ever found that before. So there are some standards there that they want us to meet that have never been met before. Their thought, looking at between the A and B, their thought was to look at Site B, but as Mr. Jewell pointed out, at this stage, we're still got to do some more looking to see what size facility we're going to do. But these are the only two sizes of property the county already has that you can do anything with whatsoever.
So we're saying Site A is off the table?
You can build it. They didn't say you can't build there. They're just saying you're going to have a lot more expensive dealing with environmental and all these kind of things. But we as a county have tried to determine don't build into floodways. So Site A, to me, I would not build in Site A. I think there's a lot of problems there if we tried to build there. It's in a floodway, as it right beside where this jail would be proposed to go, flooded back in September with a football field. So, so we looked at the other one we've already got, which is where the tobacco, where the warehouses were that fell down, and it's kind of over where the fire station is. And it's in a floodway, but there's some things you can do there. You can build in it. They were okay with that. Another thought they had on Site A is because of erosion control, they said if you have any kind of raining or any flooding whatsoever, they don't think there's any way we would be able to prevent contaminating the creek down here because of runoff. So they didn't tell you not to build in Site A, but they strongly recommended looking somewhere else, and so did the USDA, who would propose to help us fund it, to give us a loan to build it. First thing I showed them these maps and looked at it, they said, do you have somewhere else other than Site A? So that's why I looked at Site B.
How big is Site B?
If you combine some of these, I think it's probably around, I'm going to say 7 acres if you give yourself a little bit more leeway to include the expansion of the fire station. And that's if you're building it in an L shape.
Mr. Bass, what could we get in 7 acres in an L shape, single story?
Could you? Was that the question?
What could we get in bedside? For, say, the plan that was drawn up on the first time we met. Would that particular jail fit in that 7 acres?
Absolutely.
Like I said, 125 beds in an area that big.
Plus room for expansion, plus room for parking. 7 acres would definitely accommodate the size facility we're talking about.
Okay.
You're still
Talking
in
about jail alone, no sheriff's department.
Oh, you could probably do it all there and even have room for a small courtroom there if necessary. We've seen, how big is Clay County's site?
10, that's 10.
Yeah, but they have lots of room and there's way more flood weight on the property they're building on. It's a 10 acre site, I believe, and the back end of the property is pretty much unusual because it is a floodway.
The civil engineer's gonna weigh in on that about foot traffic and automobile traffic. So they're gonna say we need an X amount of parking spaces, egress for automobiles, so they're gonna weigh in on that. But I think what you're asking is that, yeah, that's doable.
Dwight, what are we gonna do with the property behind the fire station?
Well, you're problematic with all of this because not only, it's not just that it's in a floodway, it's in a floodplain. The blue areas are AE, which is annual event. It floods typically every year. You'd have to come up above that to get into the same no-rise information if you just fill there. The other thing that some of you may not be aware of, all of the old warehouses that were there were pushed to the back of this and buried. So I doubt that you'd ever get a compaction test on the back part of this, these lots. That would be problematic. I think it's going to be just as problematic trying to build in there almost as it would be Site A because of the floodplain issues. We have our town in a unique position. We've built it in the floodplain, and it's not conducive to doing anything in that area. If you had this where you could zoom it out, you could see that there are areas of the town that are higher elevation that would be where you would not be in that situation. But the reason, if you look at that map and the outline of the fire department building, you see that it is not in the AE or the blue area. I'm talking about this map here.
Right, we built that up, though, didn't we?
No.
Did you do the fire hall?
A little bit, the parking area, just the parking area.
I didn't remember.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that could be problematic. The back part of this, I'd say the back half of this has all been filled with those old warehouses and everything that was in them.
Yeah,
It was just a hole dug and pushed it in there with a bulldozer and covered it over.
So 7 acres goes down to what?
Probably usable, I would say 2, maybe 3. Since you got the fire station already on part of it, I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying that's going to be problematic when the engineering gets into looking at compaction tests and things of this nature.
Well, anything you do on this piece of property is going to require significant fill.
Sure.
I mean, significant.
And even some of the other property that we've discussed across the road, directly across from this, not as subject to flooding because you have the road that actually is down, but it technically is also in that floodplain area.
What about the old Texas blue property?
It's in floodplain area.
Where's your house at, Mayor?
Taylortown. Way out there.
It's too far, never mind.
Well, I'm just saying that some of the properties we have in town are really going to be problematic to build a building of the type of building, the security level that we're talking about building, and the investment that we're putting into it too, is going to be, I don't know another word other than problematic for these sites.
What's the problem with building out?
Nowhere to go.
We're just don't go to county on land, you're saying?
There's no land coming into the creek. There's literally, you've got a little space, but there's no way that you could. And the problem we have down there now with the existing campus is the flooding issue.
I'm saying, what about like further out into the county?
Oh, you mean building further out, other than having to acquire property?
That's the main.
Yeah. That's the thing, we wanted to look if we had property that was suitable that we could use, that's saving money. But no, in my opinion, we need to be somewhere further out. And, but I'm sure there are properties that would be, available that would fit that bill, but they're certainly going to cost money if you're just escalating the cost of doing the project.
We don't own that piece of property where that car dealership was on 25 headed out in town, going left,
No,
something tech building? No, it's not ours.
gentleman, a
No.
guy in Mount Juliet owns that.
Land tech building.
Land tech, yes.
Yeah, but that's the type of properties that would be a good site in that you're not dealing with floodplain issues, you're on a main road, you're still relatively close into town, and I'm sure that's what we need to be looking at. But but it's hard to go looking for property when we know how much property we have to have. And that's why I'm saying that we have some idea of the size and the physical shape or footprint, so to speak, You know, as far as that's concerned, we've got a 2,800 bed prison sitting out there. I guess you could maybe acquire property somewhere near it. I don't know. I mean, there are properties. We have a lot of properties. They're just not for sale. But everything's for sale at the right price.
Two things happen typically. County Correctional Partnerships will identify 6 targets.
Okay.
We've seen as high as 8, and in one particular county there were 14. I'd like to see the confusion cut down. If we could maybe weed some of that out before you get to that point.
Is it more desirable to be on a main road or not? Is that necessarily a factor? Is it okay to be off on a secondary road somewhere, or is that more desirable?
Well, typically, again, I'll use that word because that comes with the possibility of 3-phase wiring, sewer, and water. We do have a county that's actually having to build an access road, and I want to tell you something. That 2 miles that they're having to run that pavement out there and that sewer and all that, that's a lot of money, but they don't have any choice. The other thing that happens, and I'll say this, I know I'm being recorded, but what I'm about to say is not controversial at all. It's just cold hard facts. There are people that want to profiteer.
Sure.
So the moment that consideration for my property, sometimes they don't take any consideration. Your government doesn't have unlimited funds, and they're not going to buy their property for 10 times what it's worth. I mean, you're going to be using fair appraisal values, I'm sure, and then you're going to pay above if it's above market price just because of the location. That's just the e-merge. That's just commerce. But
You get 2 or 3 properties that would compete against each other a little bit.
Two biggest limiting factors are going to be floodplain issues and availability of sewer. We have very little property that is close to or on sewer or could have sewer connection. There are properties, but they're few and far between, and most of them, they're not sitting there with a for sale sign in the yard. I'm not saying that they wouldn't sell, but I'm just saying they're not trying to sell. But I think we're going to have to go that direction. I think we're going to have to get the footprint of what's available in the sewer and start looking at the properties that are in that footprint.
Well, that was going to be my answer to your question about desirability, the ability to build out. It depends on your infrastructural support. Whatever is already there is going to be a yes, right? And sometimes the cost of building up exceeds the cost of moving infrastructure. It was less than the cost of moving infrastructure, even though it's an ideal piece of land. So infrastructural support is going to come into that. So, is there sewer? Is there 3-phase wire? Is the property level?
Right.
We had one that dug into a side of a mountain, and basically blasted out a quarter of this mountain to be able to expand their jail. So, but versus moving somewhere else, it came out cheaper to blow out half the side of the mountain.
Let's not forget one more element when you're out having these discussions, and that's the public. Their perception of a jail and what it is, sometimes it's based in reality and sometimes it's not.
Right.
You will find property owners that think it's going to be face the value of their property if you bring a jail out there to their community.
Oh, one reason we were wanting to use county property is that.
Yeah.
We're going to have a public hailstorm of opposition, no matter where we want to put it. Even here, they're going to jump up and down. I mean, that's to be expected, but.
Well, a perfect example of that is look at Nashville. They tore down the downtown jail and built one in its place. And all they were originally going to do is move it up to where the other jail site is.
Right.
Yet there were still people going, not in my backyard.
Right.
And you're like, well, there's already a jail in your backyard.
And I assure you we will
Doesn't make
have
sense, but no complaint.
more of that than you would believe. Because our population is sensitive to that. Because we went through that with this prison that we just put in out here. And I saw the unrest and over that, and still is. There's still people fighting it being there now. And it's a negative connotation, we know that, and it's going to be something to be overcome. And anywhere we put it, that's going to be an issue. So I think that's going to be an issue no matter where you put it. I think that would be an issue if you put it right over there, if that was a suitable location. That's still going to be an issue.
You know, I've seen it where the jail went out there, and look, we have to appreciate those people's value their opinion. I know y'all do, but it actually helped the community, and all of a sudden, attorney offices were being built in that community, and it just helped. Restaurants came, shops came. You know, it's called progress. It kind of moves. So,
but I think, have we, am I in saying that most communities have had to move away from their downtown area out into a more rural agricultural setting for a new jail?
Shelbyville, Tennessee is a prime example in Bedford County.
I know Columbia did.
In Columbia
went way out there in the industrial park.
Coffee County, I mean, they move out that way. But then again, what I see is over a small, relatively short period of time, you start seeing growth out that direction.
Right.
Because the people that are involved and associated with that building every day. And by the same token, we go to towns where they don't want it moved because the attorneys have all invested in the buildings, and people that use that courthouse every day or going to that jail every day, they want it convenient. And I value their opinion too. I understand that, but yeah, that's what we're seeing, and we've already mentioned it here more than once today. What's the future hold? So when you do that, what kind of expansion can be done later? Your plight here, so to speak, is not unlike that of Cheatham County. And we've been working very closely with them. It's public knowledge. I mean, it's in all the papers. And they have the flood issue, very, very serious.
They're on the river too.
You know, currently they're looking at buying City Hall, tearing it down, building their jail, letting City Hall move somewhere. So it can get very detailed and real quick and engrossed into a whole different ball of wax real quick. They just don't have anywhere to go because of the flooding.
Yeah, their option right now, and what they decide on for the most part, is to build behind the current jail on less than a 2-acre plot, about 250 more beds. They're gonna have parking problems, they're gonna have lots of different things, but it's less than 2 acres.
I mean, I see all the pluses for trying to stay in this area so that you're close to what we already have. Criminal Justice Center, here, whatever. But if it's just not suitable, it's not suitable. I mean,
when you're talking about, you made this statement, I like your statement about what do we build over the creek. So I immediately imagined some Frank Lloyd Wright architecture.
falling water.
So it's a major factor. But we will put those things together, the things you already copied off their master plan, and we'll put some ideas and send them an email to you. And we're here to help. And if you'd like for me to come back and give you time just to show you my property matrix, it's worked for other counties. And it kind of addresses all those things that you've been mentioning.
And in a lot of cities, they'll take the lower level for a parking area. I hate to use the term building it on piers or stilts, but they're using the floodplain area as a parking area,
True.
which is allowed. And then you're so far above the floodplain area with the actual building and things. Rutherford County, their whole courthouse complex is built that way. You've got underground parking and things. So there are workarounds, but those workarounds typically cost more. But what you would offset in building that way, the additional cost you may save in what it costs you to buy property somewhere else to build a different way. So I think options are important, and but neither one of these both of these properties are going to be problematic. The one over here behind City Hall, because it's a floodway, and that is newly documented. We had asked for a flood study on the downtown area 5 or 6 years ago, I believe it was, and they finally did it, and because our flood maps were not accurate. And these are accurate, and these are up to date. And you cannot build in a floodway. Floodplain, AE area, 1% area, you just have to do it a certain way. But that over behind City Hall, unless you get beyond it and get some of those other properties beyond it, which some of them we own, you might be able to tear them down and push further back up, like the board office, old board office and things like that. But
if you have to reconstitute property like you were talking about where they buried those houses, that is very, very expensive. And you're right, that's going to be an issue that it talks about environmental and doing the compaction test, do your core drilling, they come up with something like that.
we are fortunate, we do have some large tracts of agricultural property that sewer lines, main sewer lines run through to get to the sewer plant. I don't know that any of them could be bought or any portion of them could be bought, but there are properties, there are areas that would have sewer available to them.
You know the fairgrounds do? Don't want to have fairgrounds?
No, we don't. We have a city park, but it's very limited in space, but beyond it would be one of those areas I was talking about that you have a sewer access to, good water access, things of that nature. But,
well, one thing I'd like you to consider too, while we're at this junction, just throwing it out there, the sheriff would really like to egresses into his facility. So for security reasons, you know, we do have some facilities, it's a dead end road. It ends up at that jail, and transporting the dangerous criminals that we do, that's just really not the best option. If you've got a facility built where there's more than one way, those inmates learn those routes, and especially if you just got one route, he gets on the phone, he can stage an escape, it's just dangerous. So hopefully you won't get pushed into that. There's one road in, there's two roads, two ways in and out.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to take over the conversation.
I thought it was a great conversation.
So we're going to do a needs assessment that'll be sent to the CTAS with Jim Hart.
You have his email that I need to provide it?
No, I got him. He was on the email chain when we were discussing the grand jury issue. A master plan that can be done between you and CTAS, TCI and CTAS working with us, and then CTAS can assist with drafting an RFQ for engineering services.
Correct.
And then we can go ahead, just based on conversations, I mean, I was kind of thinking out on 25, we got that 12-inch sewer lane, some places like that, just get things like that together. But as we move forward, get the needs assessment, kind of figure out what kind of size jail we're looking at. And again, programs, I think we talked about this last time, the sheriff and I looked at trying to do other programs, and I know they talked about it in Wilson County with a drug court, or not drug court, but the drug coalition we went to out there, talking about trying to get other programs. And I have talked to our continuum of care that assists with homelessness about trying to maybe work to set up a transitional housing program if they get released from jail, have some kind of transitional housing with wraparound services, trying to reduce recidivism that way. So yeah, I'll reach out to Jim Hart with CTAS, and we'll start doing the needs assessment, start working with you all, shooting master plan, and then working on drafting RFQ for emergency services. And of course, I'll include all this on the email chain with everybody here on the CCP and keep you in the loop. And if you got any questions or thoughts or anything like that, be sure to reach out to me and we'll get them addressed. Do you all have any questions or thoughts or anything you've heard today, or anything you think we need to look at going forward? I know the initial, just kind of talking to the sheriff, what they put together would address some places to meet with attorneys, and it did address the issue to have segregation of inmates. And I think they have a larger medical facility. Some of the things we've seen recently have had facilities to address those. And we did discuss keeping the current jail and turning that into a workhouse, because we have had, I believe my last count was about 4 companies that would be willing to locate to Trousdale County if we could furnish them with maybe some inmate labor through a work release program. So that's another area we were looking at, trying to repurpose the current jails. That's just all the kind of things we're looking at. So I'll stop talking in case anybody's got anything they want to say, and I won't talk over anyone, I promise.
Mayor, I was just going to say, it was very informative. I learned a lot today about what's going on, the issues that we're facing.
All right, I thank everyone for coming out. I really appreciate you participating in this program. And again, if you need to reach out to me, don't hesitate to do so. And I'll try to work with them and we'll schedule another meeting. I know we got holidays coming up, so it may be January before we have another meeting, but I'll certainly keep everyone in the loop. And if it push does come to shove, everybody okay? I know we're all tired of Zoom meetings, but if push comes to shove and we need to have one, are you okay with doing it that way? We do have that ability, so. Okay, well, thank you very much.